Well, folks, it was great to sit down today with Konstantin Kisin from TRIGGERnometry. If you haven't heard the podcast, it's fantastic, and Konstantin is really a lot of fun to talk to. Here's what it sounded like. Folks, we're joined by Konstantin Kisin. He's co-host of TRIGGERnometry YouTube show and the author of the best-selling book, An Immigrant's Love Letter to the West. Konstantin, great to see you.
Great to be back.
So let's start off with sort of how you've gained a lot of notoriety, which is the anti-woke fight. How did you find yourself in that fight, and why has it become such a big thing?
Well, initially I was a stand-up comedian, and I really wasn't clued into any of what was going on. And then suddenly I just heard people talking about certain groups of people on race and sex as if they're really bad. And I couldn't really work out what that was about. So my friend and Francis and I, we just wanted to find out why it is that this was happening. And Brexit then really lit a fire under this, because I don't know if you know this, but in comedy, there's this idea of like punching down, which is making fun of vulnerable groups. And then after Brexit, and Francis and I both voted Remain, by the way, in that referendum, but suddenly like it was totally okay to suggest that old people who'd voted for Brexit should die on stage for comedians. And I just thought that doesn't really make sense. And so we wanted to find out what was the ideology behind what was going on in our industry, which I think jumped into wokeness a lot earlier than many other industries. We're like way ahead.
And then you were at Oxford, and obviously there's a lot of controversy over your activities at Oxford in the anti-woke category. So why don't you tell people about that?
Well, that was a speech that I gave a few months ago that went super viral around the world. And really, I was asked to speak about wokeness, but probably like you, I'm kind of getting tired of talking about it. Like I want to get to the post-woke world. And that's why I'm thinking a lot about what is the positive vision that we can offer young people. So when they asked me to speak about wokeness, I was like, look, I'm so tired of this. I don't want to talk to you about this. Let's talk about an issue you guys care about. You say, young people say, you're suffering from climate anxiety. You say that, this is a massive issue that you really care about. But look at what you're actually doing. You're not doing anything. You're just, following in the footsteps of St. Greta of climate change. You're talking, you're scolding. You're not doing anything. And the way to improve the world is to work, is to create things, is to build things. And I gave them some, I think, powerful arguments about how, making poor people in the rest of the world poorer isn't going to get them on board with fixing climate or anything like that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from now, is I think we all know what the problem is with wokeness. It's anti-West, it's anti-merit, and it's anti-truth. Let's talk about why the West is good. Let's talk about why merit is important, and let's talk about why truth is important.
The 4th of July is right around the corner. With how many family gatherings we have lined up, the last thing I need when I host my family is to run out of propane at the grill. I'm planning on a lot of grilling this summer. Cinch makes the magic happen. Cinch is a propane grill tank home delivery service. They deliver propane tanks right to your door on your schedule. They don't require any long-term commitment or subscription. Plus, delivery is completely contactless. You don't have to wait around at home. Track the order on the Cinch app from anywhere. The perfect summer night wouldn't be complete without Cinch. Go to cinch.com or download that Cinch app and use promo code Shapiro to get your first tank exchange for just $10. Again, I'm looking forward to a lot of grilling this summer, so I'm relying on Cinch. You should too. That's CYNCH.com, promo code Shapiro. It's a limited time offer. You must live within a Cinch service area to redeem it. Visit cinch.com/offer for details. It's going to be a great summer. You're going to be in that backyard next to the pool, grilling it up. There's nothing worse than you run out of propane for your gas, like when you're doing the grill. You don't want that to happen. Instead, head on over to Cinch, cinch.com, promo code Shapiro. Go check them out right now. Again, that's cinch.com, promo code Shapiro. And we say a lot of controversial things on this show, and it takes a special kind of company to want to partner with this show. This is why we appreciate our friends over at Pure Talk. Pure Talk makes it possible for me to get up here and bring you facts, logic, and truth every single day. Pure Talk shares my values as well as those of Matt Walsh, Andrew Klavan, Candace Owens, and the rest of the Daily Wire hosts. That's why we made them the official wireless partner of the Daily Wire, but that's not the only reason. We check the coverage, and it is premium. Pure Talk is the most dependable 5G network in the United States. I use it myself. Mix and match your plans to fit every person in your family. Choose from talk, text, and 5G data for just $20 a month, all the way up to unlimited data with mobile hotspot for $55 a month. Remember, you vote with how you spend your money, so stop supporting woke wireless companies that don't really like you very much, and in fact, use your money to push forward ESG or DEI. Instead, head on over to puretalk.com/Shapiro to save an additional 50% off your very first month of coverage. That's puretalk.com/Shapiro. And I've been using Pure Talk myself for all my business calls. They have a great wireless network because they use the same network as one of the big guys. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro to get started. Pure Talk is wireless for Americans by Americans. puretalk.com/Shapiro. Again, save an additional 50% off your very first month of coverage. So one of the things that's happened is that the backlash against, I think, the woke is so strong that it's also carried forward some figures who are very controversial. So obviously Andrew Tate is one of those figures. You and I are talking off air about this a little bit. But people like Andrew have been getting all sorts of notoriety, largely because they're punching back so hard. And I understand the sympathy for that position, but it feels to me like that's also carrying forward some messages that are not what we would traditionally conceive of as sort of within the Western civilized context as what it would mean to be a man. And this carries a danger too. It seems to me that politics in this era has become so radically vacillating. If it just feels like a pendulum, but there's no center to the pendulum. It never. You imagine that at a certain point the momentum would kind of give away and it would sort of reach stasis somewhere in the middle. But instead, things are vacillating so wildly that the radicals at each extreme seem to take energy from the radicals at the opposite extreme, and so you end up just not knowing where you are. It feels chaotic.
Well, we live in the age of extremism, and I think that's a big reason for that is social media. Social media rewards and encourages people to say the most ridiculous, outlandish things. Well, Andrew Tate is a symptom. I don't know him personally. I don't have any particular issue with him. But I think if we're talking about, the pushback against the demonization of men and masculinity and so on, what that looks like is encouraging men to be responsible, encouraging men to have families and look after their kids. And I think that's much more, to me, it's never been my aspiration to have lots of cars and to bang lots of hot women. Like I've always thought that, what a man's job is to look after other people and to take responsibility. And so that's the message I'm trying to put out there.
So let's talk for a second about the fact that you wrote a book, An Immigrant's Love Letter to the West. So what is your history? And because you're sort of an outside commentator on the West, and then you're also an outside commentator on America. You've been spending an increasing amount of time in America. So give me your story a little bit.
So I was born in the late Soviet Union. Most of my family were repressed, as we used to say in the Soviet Union. My grandmother was born in a gulag, in a concentration camp for political prisoners. And so a lot of my story is trying to explain to people that many of the things they're now seeing in the Western world didn't originate in the Western world. And that bothers me because most people don't even know where political correctness comes from. So I'm sure you do, but most people in the West don't know that it comes from the Soviet Union. And it never had anything to do with being nice to people and not offending anybody. It was a way of saying to people, what you're saying is factually correct, but it's politically incorrect. And what that meant was it's inconvenient to the party line of the day. My grandfather criticized the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in the late 80s in the Soviet Union, immediately lost his job. His wife was kicked out of her job. And again, does that sound unfamiliar to people in the modern West? So I'm just worried that we are forgetting what made our societies what they are, what made them great.